Welcome, race fans, to Pump the Brakes, the one, the only, the Cadillac of Formula One podcasts. I am your host, the Pit Lane Patriot. This week we will be previewing the most legendary race on the calendar, the Monaco Grand Prix. Alright, let's talk about the Monaco Grand Prix. If you're a newer Formula One fan, or if you're listening to this and you're still learning about the sport along with me, Monaco's probably the one race on the calendar that you've actually heard of. You may not know Spa, you may not know Suzuka or Silverstone or Imola, but you probably heard of the Monaco Grand Prix. Because Monaco's not just a race, it's almost like a movie poster for Formula One. The yachts, the harbor, celebrities, casinos, cliffs, tiny streets. The cars are flying through a place that looks like it's designed for rich people walking to dinner, not for Formula One cars going full send. It's the race where even people who don't watch racing will see a clip and go, wait, they race there? Yes. They race there. And that's why Monaco is so special. It's ridiculous, glamorous. Honestly, it's outdated in some ways, and it's impossible in others. And somehow, every year, it still feels like Formula One has got to go there, because Monaco is Monaco. It's one of those races where the value is not only the on-track product. Let's be honest, it's not always the best racing, and it's not usually an overtaking festival. It's not the race where you expect 20 passes or a late-breaking battle or someone charging from 16th to the podium. It's not Monaco. Monaco is tension. It's more pressure, precision. Monaco is qualifying with consequences. It's the difference between driving fast and threading a needle at 180 miles an hour while the walls are basically saying, if you mess up, your weekend's over. So the circuit to Monaco is 3.37 kilometers long. It's a street track. The race is 78 laps, and because overtaking is so difficult, Saturday can feel almost as important as Sunday, sometimes more important. This is the race where track position is king. You don't just want a good car. You want a car that rotates well in slow corners. You want traction. You want stability. You want the driver to feel like they can kiss the wall without marrying it. Because at Monaco, bravery matters. And stupid bravery gets punished immediately. That's why this weekend is fascinating, because 2026 cars are different. The regulations are different. The racing product has been weird, sometimes exciting, sometimes frustrating. And now we go to the one track where all the normal assumptions get thrown out the window. So there are two rule-related things that I want to go over before we get into the grid stories. First, Monaco will not use the new straight mode overtaking aid. So that whole straight, the overtaking button won't be used in Monaco. And that makes sense, because where exactly are we using it? Through the tunnel and someone's rear wing? Monaco's really hard to overtake, so we're simply not going to use that. Second, mandatory two-stop rule from last year is gone. So we're not doing the artificial strategy experiment again. Last year, F1 tried to force some variety into Monaco by requiring two stops. And it didn't work. It didn't make Monaco more exciting. That rule was scrapped. Honestly, I'm okay with that. Monaco should be Monaco. I get why people wanted to fix it. I get why people complain that the race becomes a parade. But it is what it is. Qualifying matters. Pit timing matters. Safety cars matter. Tire temperature matters. Track evolution matters. It's not always wheel-to-wheel action. Sometimes it's don't blink for 2 hours. And if that sounds boring to you, I get it. But to me, Monaco is almost like a different sport inside of Formula One. It's like when a basketball team has to win an ugly playoff game, 89 to 84. Not every game is fast breaks and threes. Sometimes it's defense, footwork, positioning, and not making the dumb mistake. That's Monaco. And heading into this year's race, the whole grid has some real stories.
There you go. P1 in Monaco, baby. Monaco, baby! Yeah, baby!
All right, let's start at the front. Mercedes. So Kimi Antonelli is leading the championship. He's won 4 Grand Prix, and I'm sorry, but we have to say that out loud every week because it still sounds insane. He won 4 Grand Prix in a row. Kimi Antonelli is 19 years old, driving for Mercedes, and already looks like the center of the F1 universe, which is not normal. It's not like good rookie stuff. It's superstar trajectory, generational talent stuff. And now he arrives in Monaco with a 43-point lead over George Russell. But here's where it gets spicy. George Russell has been fast. George Russell has not been getting destroyed on pace. Canada could have been his weekend. He had the speed, he had the fight, he was in there, and he did everything right. And that matters because his championship is not just Antonelli is great. It's also Russell cannot let this one get away from him. And if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know I am team George Russell for this championship. And at some point, if you're George Russell, the match starts to become emotional. You can say all the right things. You can say that there's a lot of races left. You can say you just need to chip away, and that is true. But when your teenage teammate keeps winning and every missed opportunity becomes another chunk of points gone, the pressure changes. Monaco is huge for George Russell. Not because the championship ends here, because it doesn't, but because perception matters in Formula One. If Russell beats Antonelli in Monaco, especially in the qualifying, which is the most important part of Monaco, because Monaco is really hard to overtake. So if Russell beats Antonelli in Monaco, the story becomes, okay, Russell's still there, he's still in the fight. But if Antonelli wins, if Antonelli goes to Monaco, handles those walls, the pressure, the history, and beats Russell again, then his narrative starts getting very loud. Because Monaco is not about pace, it's about nerve. And if the 19-year-old has the nerve, that's terrifying for the rest of the grid.
Antonelli has got past Russell. Russell has got past Antonelli again. Are they going to make contact? George Russell.
Now let's talk about Ferrari. Because Ferrari might be the biggest non-Mercedes story of the whole weekend. And that's not just because Monaco is glamorous and Ferrari is Ferrari, but because Ferrari actually might have a real shot to win this. Lewis Hamilton just had his best Grand Prix result for Ferrari in Canada. He finished second, he looked comfortable, he battled Max and won the fight late. And most importantly, he sounded like a driver who's finally starting to feel connected to the car and to the team. And that's a big deal because the Hamilton-Ferrari era has been waiting for this kind of moment. Not like a symbolic moment, not like just a red suit. Lewis Hamilton's in a Ferrari, isn't that cool? I'm talking about like real on-track moments. And Canada, for Lewis, felt like that. Now Monaco gives Ferrari a different kind of opportunity. Ferrari's been losing time on the straights, but Monaco is not a power circuit. Monaco's corners, traction, confidence, and low-speed grip. Charles Leclerc is at home. He won Monaco in 2024. He knows what this race means better than anyone. And if Ferrari is really strong in the low-speed sections, it's exactly the kind of weekend where Leclerc can become a problem. And then you add Hamilton, 3-time Monaco winner, finally looking happier in a Ferrari, coming off of a second place, going to a track where experience matters and where a little bit of magic can cover up a lot. It's a very interesting combination. So for Ferrari, this weekend feels like a genuine opportunity. Not a maybe if Mercedes falls apart kind of opportunity. I'm talking about like a real opportunity. And if Ferrari can put one of its cars on pole position during the qualifier, all of a sudden this race changes completely. Because Monaco does not care who has the fastest car over the full season. Monaco cares who can deliver one perfect lap on Saturday and then survive Sunday. Now McLaren. It's a big weekend for McLaren because Canada was bad. There's no nice way to say it. Canada was awful for McLaren. Canada was the kind of race where everyone in the debrief probably needed to take a deep breath before anyone started talking. The strategy gamble on the intermediates did not work. The rain didn't come the way it needed. The track dried quickly. Lando Norris had a car issue and then a terminal gearbox issue. Oscar Piastri had contact with Alex Albon, damage and a penalty, and McLaren left Canada with no one scoring. For a rain-tight champion team, that's a nightmare. And this comes at a pretty bad time because Mercedes is not waiting around. Antonelli is stacking wins, Mercedes is leading both championships, Ferrari's getting confidence, Red Bull's starting to show signs of life, and McLaren just had a bad weekend. They're defending champion. So McLaren really needs to respond here in Monaco. And Monaco is a strange place to respond because you can't brute force your way through this race. You can't just say, our race pace is good, we'll recover on Sunday. No, if you qualify badly in Monaco, you may spend the entire race staring at someone's gearbox and contemplating your life choices as opposed to winning. For Lando Norris, this is also personal in a competitive sense. He won Monaco last year. He knows he can do it. He knows what a perfect Monaco weekend feels like and looks like. And after Canada, McLaren really needs someone to put the team back on stable ground. So if anyone can do it, it should be the defending champion, the one in the number one car. For Piastri, it's also a reset weekend. The team has not gone the way McLaren probably wanted. The points gap is getting bigger. The team's execution has been questioned. Monaco becomes a chance to stop the bleeding. Not necessarily win, but stop the bleeding. Qualify well, execute cleanly, score heavily, remind everyone McLaren is not going away and is still a top team. Because if McLaren has another messy weekend, then we are not just talking about one bad Canada race anymore. We're talking about a pattern. And a pattern is when things get really serious. All right, so Red Bull. This one's interesting because Canada was the first real sign of life from Red Bull this season. Max Verstappen got his first podium of 2026. He finished third. He said they can still do a lot better, which is the most Max Verstappen thing ever. He's always going to say that. The man gets on the podium for the first time all year and basically says, nice, but no, it wasn't a win. And honestly, that's why he's Max. Red Bull's been weird this year. New era, new rules, different picture in the front. They have their own engine that they're making in-house with some sort of combination with Ford. For a while, they looked closer to the midfield than the top, but the last couple of weekends, and especially Canada, suggest they may be finding something. Monaco is very interesting. Monaco is a very interesing test of that because if Red Bull's improvements are real, Monaco can show it. If the car can better balance, better confidence, better traction, better slow speed behavior, Max can do Max thing. But if the car is still difficult, then Monaco's just going to expose that. There's no hiding at Monaco. You can't mask a nervous car with a long straight. You can't just wait for a DRS zone. You can't muscle your way through traffic. The car either gives the driver confidence or the driver spends the weekend fighting it. And Max, on the confidence track, is always dangerous. Even in a season where Red Bull is not the team to beat, if Verstappen is within range on Sunday, everyone has to pay attention. Also, Isaac Hadjar becomes a sneaky storyline. He finished 5th in Canada, and he's not just the other Red Bull driver right now. He's starting to build legit credibility. Monaco can be brutal for a young driver, but it can also be a statement track. For Hadjar, in his second year, keep it clean, get into Q3, score points, and suddenly people will start talking about you very differently. And now, let's talk about Alpine, or should I say Gucci Alpine. For those who are just joining us and weren't with us last week, apparently Formula One is part racing series and part fashion week now because Gucci is joining the grid as Gucci Alpine F1 team in 2027.
Gucci has just become the first luxury fashion house to ever title sponsor a Formula One team. It's a big deal.
Gucci finalized the deal last week with Alpine, and in 2027, Gucci becomes Alpine's title partner. The team will be racing under the name Gucci Racing Alpine. I don't even know what to fully do with that sentence. Gucci Racing Alpine F1 team. That sounds like something a career mode randomizer would generate at like 2 o'clock in the morning. But honestly, it makes sense for where Formula One is going. F1 is not just motorsport anymore. It's a culture, it's a fashion, it's Netflix, it's luxury, it's social media, it's global branding. So Gucci showing up, it kind of makes sense. Okay, but Gucci jokes aside, Alpine is actually having a pretty solid start to their year. They're 5th in the constructor standings, and Franco Colapinto had a strong start in Canada, finishing 6th, which is his highest ever. And that matters, because for a team that has had plenty of chaos over the last few years, momentum matters. And Monaco is exactly the kind of place where midfield teams can make headlines. One good qualifying, one safety car, one strategy call, one mistake from a front runner. Suddenly a team like Alpine can walk away with a huge points result. Same thing for Racing Bulls, Haas, Williams, Audi. I'm looking at all you guys, all those midfield teams and lower midfield teams. They have an opportunity at Monaco because that power, that raw speed doesn't matter as much in Monaco. At Monaco, the midfield fight is not just about who has a better race pace. It's about who survives, who keeps it out of the wall, who gets their tires warmed up right, who avoids traffic in qualifying, who doesn't get caught up sleeping during the safety car, who takes advantage when someone else makes the Monaco mistake, because someone always does. And that's the thing about Monaco. You can spend the whole weekend saying nothing happens here, and then one lockup, one bad pit stop, one crash, and everything changes. It's boring until it's not, and then it becomes unforgettable. So big picture, heading into Monaco, Mercedes arrives as the clear championship leader. There's still that internal fight. I'm still Team Russell all day. Antonelli's trying to keep building what looks like a historic start to F1's F1 career, and Russell, I believe, will stop that narrative from running away from him. Ferrari arrives with real optimism. Home race for Leclerc. Lewis Hamilton feels like a GOAT, gonna come in like the GOAT. McLaren needs to clean up their response after a terrible Canada, period. They just need to get it together. Red Bull shows up with signs of life, and a Max Verstappen who is never safe to ignore. He always has an opportunity. Alpine arrives with momentum, points, and apparently what will be next year the most expensive team wardrobe on the grid. And the rest of the midfield arrives knowing that Monaco can turn one perfect Saturday into a massive Sunday. And that's why this race matters. Not because it always gives us the best wheel-to-wheel racing, because it really doesn't. But it tells us who can handle pressure, who can execute, who can qualify when the walls are breathing all over them, who can stay calm when every corner is trying to ruin the weekend. Monaco is Formula One's like weirdest flex. It's a glamorous, claustrophobic, beautiful, frustrating, historic, and completely unreasonable race. And somehow that's exactly why it works. So now that we've set the table for Monaco and the rest of the grid, let's bring it back to the reason why we're all here to begin with. Because if Monaco is about execution, pressure, precision, and not wasting the car underneath you, then this is exactly the perfect week to talk about our team, Cadillac.
Do you know, shout out to Cadillac.
So this week's Cadillac update is actually really interesting. And honestly, I think it's one of the most important updates we've had so far this season. Okay, so the headline isn't that we're slow or that we're hopeless. The headline's not that, oh, the new team is getting embarrassing. No, the real headline is that Cadillac has already cleared the first hurdle, which is belonging on the grid. Actually staking claim on the grid and being respected was the first mission. Now the harder part starts. They have to prove that they can operate like they belong there every single weekend. And that distinction mattered because when Cadillac came into Formula One, the realistic expectation was simple. They were probably gonna be last, maybe last by a lot. It's a brand new team, still building itself, still recruiting, still developing its facilities, still figuring out how to function inside the most competitive racing series in the world. So if the Mach 26 was 5 seconds off the pace and barely made the 107% rule, that would be scary. But that's not what's happening. The pace is already respectable. Are they at the back? Yeah. Are we still looking for our first point? Yeah. Are we a finished product? Absolutely not. But are we some sort of rolling disaster? Not even close, ladies and gentlemen. We're fighting with Aston Martin. We're starting to annoy some established midfield cars. We're starting to have weekends where the gap is not embarrassing at all. And since that Miami upgrade, you can see that there's been something to build on. So that's the part that I keep coming back to as a pit lane patriot and your guide to Cadillac F1. This car can hustle The Mach 26 is no rocket ship. We didn't think it was gonna be when we started. It's not suddenly challenging for podiums. We're not doing fake hype here. We said we're gonna keep it real on this podcast and follow this journey for real, and that's what we're gonna do. But for a year one car, from a year one team, this is legit. There's life in this. And that's why Checo Perez's comments this week are important. Checo basically said that the performance is improving, but operationally, the Cadillac is lacking tremendously. And that's concerning. He says that the actual car itself is the performance is improving, but it's on the operational side, meaning the people. And you know what? I'm glad he said that. Good. Not because I want drama. I don't want any panic. But it's exactly why you hired Sergio Perez. You don't hire Checo just to smile for the camera, sell hats, and say, hey, great job, everybody. We finished 17th. Absolutely not. You hired Checo because he's been in winning environments. He knows what a serious Formula One operation is supposed to feel like. He knows what Red Bull looked like from the inside. He knows what a race-winning garage feels like. He knows how quickly progress and decision-making is supposed to happen. And he knows how clean execution has to be. So when he says Cadillac is not maximizing results, I don't hear that as complaining. I hear it as leadership. I hear it as a call to action. That's our veteran driver walking into the room and saying, guys, the car's giving us something and we're leaving time on the table. And that's a very different problem to have than having a bad car. It's a better problem. We don't have a bad car. We have a slow car, yeah, but we have our own problems that we need to fix and we can fix. If the car is completely dead, there's only so much you can do. You wait for upgrade. You wait for the next regulation cycle. You survive. But if the car has usable pace and the team is not extracting that, that means that opportunity is right in front of us. There's seconds that can be had right away. These issues we're talking about are operational, meaning garage process, setup decisions, understanding live data during a weekend, making changes quickly, getting parts fitted perfectly, making sure reliability isn't an issue. These are things that a young team that just got onto the grid is gonna go through. It's just going to happen. And we need to get through these kinks and we need to get through them now. And this was Checo giving us a call to action. Let's get this done. We got all the way up to P11. We can do this. Now first, let's be real. Cadillac deserves a lot of credit. This team has shown up in Formula One and not looked like a joke. They brought upgrades, they finished races, they had multiple double car finishes. They're way more competitive than anybody would have expected, which is huge. 2, the honeymoon period cannot last forever, guys. We loved the launch and we loved being the new team on the block. It was great, but that has to end. And it's good that it ends because then the real progress can begin. So at some point, the standards have to change. And I think that point is starting to happen. At the beginning of the season, we were all like, hey, can Cadillac survive? Can they qualify? Can they finish? Can they avoid being a total embarrassment? Now the standard is, can Cadillac execute? Can they give the drivers a clean weekend? Can we make setup calls? Can we get through qualifying without any operational issues? Honestly, I love that Checo was being impatient about this. I want him to be impatient. I want him pushing meetings. I want him telling people when they're coming up short. I want him demanding better because that's how you drag a new team forward. That's how you build your standard. That's how you stop thinking like a cute little expansion and start thinking like a real Formula One team headed for the top. And that brings us to Monaco. Now, Monaco is weird. Monaco is its own beast. You can't really treat it like a normal race weekend. Raw pace matters, obviously, but track position, confidence, precision, qualifying execution, track management, pit timing, all of this becomes massive. For Cadillac, that makes Monaco dangerous, but also fascinating. Dangerous because your operations are getting messy. Monaco will expose you immediately. There's no room to recover. You don't get endless clean laps. But fascinating because if Cadillac can execute cleanly, this might be a weekend where the gap looks a little different. Not because Monaco magically fixes the car, but because Monaco rewards teams put the weekend together properly. And that's the whole story with Cadillac right now. They need clean weekends. You need to stop bleeding time in places that are not about horsepower. They need to get better, get the basics tighter, and they need to take this Mach 26, which clearly has more fight in it than expected, and start extracting everything it has. Let's turn that P11 sprint into a standard.
Sergio Perez with a great result in the sprint race.
They're coming.
Exactly. It's exciting to see.
And there you have it, folks. That is our Monaco GP preview and our Cadillac update for the week. Join us next week where we will review the Monaco GP and talk about all things F1 and your team Cadillac. See you then.